So
The other C
feel
word.
free, yeah, feel free to keep that. Um, so we are now recording, and I am going to start as soon as there we go. Cool. Hey Natasha, I'm just gonna make you a co-host really quickly. So since once I start sharing, I can't always see if someone's coming in.
Yeah, no problem.
So let me do that before I go into um, share mode. Okay. All right. Just shared it with you. All right. Here we go. Okay. I gotta move everyone's heads. There we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to part two of. Oh, that's not what I want. Hold on. There we go. Present. There we go. Okay. Welcome to part two of Universal Design for Learning, aka Intersectional Belonging. Um, So, in part one, if you haven't watched it yet, we went over just the basics of universal design. We'll go over that again just because, like, it never hurts to hear it again. But in part two, we're going to talk a little bit more about the stair steps in the scaffold around communication and engagement in building meaningful spaces of belonging through the lens of universal design. That's really what we'll be focusing on. And in part one, we focused more on the what's the purpose, who needs to be representing, who needs to be talking, and what's the culture of the space, right? And not just culture of like people, ethnicity, race, but also like the relational culture. So Natasha and I both work from a social emotional lens in almost everything. So that's the I that's a really important component of culture too. So all right, so here's slide one. I'm going to move to slide two now, if anyone's following along. All right, here's where you can find us if you need anything. Tasha's at udforyoga.com and I'm at Integrate. I'm the octopus of that, the conductor. And then we're on slide three. This is um, just kind of just an overall picture of how we've adapted universal design for learning from like a social emotional lens. Um, I think the big thing from the framework that we've been talking about is that it comes from we blended it from the rehabilitation field, the education field, and architecture. So we've just adapted it with language for people that are in I think we call it social emotional healing centered fields, human centered fields. So we've just kind of used the language. So if you ever Google this and you're like, wait, that's not the language they use, we did our jobs. We adapted. We universal designed this too. So I just wanted to give that heads up. So if it doesn't look exactly the same, it's because we just are using language that gears to teachers and social workers and therapists, yoga teachers as well.
And that's really part of being really integrating the concepts of universal design, which these trainings are very much an example of universal design, not just a delivery of information about universal design. So there's lots of places you can go via Google to find out what universal design is and what universal design for learning is. And what we're doing here is taking that and tailoring it to more specific populations who are going to be implementing the aspects of UDL. You can go places and see it tailored for architects. You can go places and even see it tailored for your run of the mill teacher to a degree, but targeting specific skills through specific tools is more what this illustrates.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and this is more for people that are space holders, right? People that hold space for social emotional reasons, right? So, which a lot of teachers, and most teachers, social workers, yoga specialists, that's what they do, right? That's what they do. Therapists, rehab counselors, like this is it. So this is kind of the over look of it, the map, and just a little bit of a background on universal design. Um, so it the framework is it minimizes barriers and maximizes engagement. for everyone, right? But when we start to design a space or build a plan or build an agenda around a meeting, we're building the agenda around the person or groups of people that have the most need in the room, or aka the most vulnerable in the room, okay? But from a socioeconomic status or a equity status, okay? So we build that, we start there and identify the need, which you can go back to part 1 and listen to that. And then we build up and examine the other aspects. So, but then everyone else benefits once we identify that need. So that's the big, like the big overhaul of universal design in these social emotional like healing space, holding space settings. Okay, I think everything else there you can go back to part 1 and listen to on specifics, but I just want to make sure that's clear. All right, moving forward. So we're on inquiry number 4, which has us looking at communication. And it says, do we offer staff multiple ways to communicate and express themselves? And man, this is like cultural, it's adaptive, it's all of it, right? And it's a really important part after you've gone through scaffold 1, 2, and 3 of what's the purpose or who has the most need, whose needs do we need to address, who needs to be talking, what's the culture of the space, how do we need to be talking and engaging each other. Natasha, do you have anything else you want to say on that one, in that framework?
So the how of it in the communication really comes down to languaging, word choice, as well as non-verbal, non-auditory verbal means of relaying information. And so if somebody's not the type to sit down and have a conversation and then remember those 5 things you told them to go do, universal design, particularly in supervision or managerial places, and teacher to student, I consider one of those as a bit of a managerial role, is that, okay, you give directions orally, maybe you also put the directions on the board, or you provide students with a screen share onto a tablet, or even an old-fashioned printout device in whatever format that those students need. And or you provide an environment where the learner essentially parrots back to you the steps. That's universal design.
Yeah, and from like a board meeting, like adults in the room kind of a space, because I know there's a lot of adult people that are organizing adult spaces. That I think, Natasha, we talked about this on one of the podcasts, but like how like board meetings now with COVID, like school board meetings are now on YouTube, and how people are now some people that have been, for a lot of societal reasons, have not been able to access the board meetings or attend live, have been able to watch the recordings, right? Even this whole thing, even on recording here is universal, right? But going back to the board meetings, and people are able to type in their questions on YouTube, right? Because they can't be there live, but they can still participate and communicate. And that's a really good, I guess the word I'm looking for, like social response to it, like a social example of it as well, that we are seeing now in COVID, right? Is that now while things are, have been challenging for in-person meetings, we actually opened up quite a bit to get engagement from the communities for like board meetings. So our parents now can go to school board meetings, right? And Natasha and I work in what I call resilient neighborhoods, which is we have a large Black community in the spaces we are in the school system. And a lot of parents now, for the first time ever, are attending board meetings ever, because they are on YouTube and they're able to interact and take interest and give their voice to the space that they've never been able to really access before because of scheduling and other issues, no matter what, but scheduling was the big one. So that's communication. And I think with the communication piece, having the chats and all the different ways for people to interact. Like Emily just did, Emily just started chatting because she can't talk to us. So she just did that. She just articulated, she just acted it out earlier on before we started recording. So just like that, these little tiny pieces we're always doing. It's just, we always just like to point it out. Okay, inquiry number 5 is, do I motivate my class, staff, humans into adjustable levels of challenge? Engagements is what it's called. You want to speak to that, Natasha?
Yeah. So when we think about engagement, we normally think of, particularly in a school setting, it's like, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing to get the learning tasks accomplished? And engagement starts well before that. When we're thinking about, are they doing what they're air quotes supposed to be doing, we're thinking it from a reactive perspective. And so when you pull universal design into this, it requires thinking in a proactive perspective. And what do we, as the people delivering information that needs to be received, need to do in order for that information to be able to be received so that an individual can take action based on that information? That's the engagement piece. Engagement starts back at the very beginning of the design phase. When you're implementing the fundamental purpose of an activity, that's when you start thinking about engagement. What words, what tools, what actions, what mnemonics, what devices, whatever do I need to use as that hook in? It's kind of like your topic sentence. If you don't have a topic sentence, the rest of the paragraph doesn't matter. Engagement works the same way when you're looking at it through universal design lens.
Yeah, and I just want to give an example of this, and I put this on Integrate before, but I just want to bring it to life. So one time, we were called in for a reason. Natasha needed to a classroom, and we needed to articulate the need of one of our students that was being bullied, who had a visual impairment. And Natasha brought it two-sided peers, okay, able-bodied peers. And Natasha needed to bring in a relevant activity for these students to understand, like, kind of in an empowering way, what it was like for our student to, without calling him out, to see teeny tiny print that wasn't adapted, right? And so I remember, Natasha, you wrote like I think 6-point font for them, and we had these 6th graders like looking at the paper like up to their head. They were like,
yeah. So I did it in like 4 or 6-point font, and then I also didn't space it out properly to simulate a field of vision loss. So if I had the word come, the space might have been after the E, but there also might have been a space after the C, and you had to figure out that the C went with the rest of the word O-N-E or O-M-E to get to come. And so there's a lot of brain activity that had to go on to read 2 sentences that took probably 15 minutes. And what that did was build a sense of how much effort it takes for someone, not in a way that was scary by sticking simulators on them, but by replicating the emotional experience rather than the physical one, which comes directly from a social model of disability as opposed to a medical model of disability. Those 2 are really key when you start talking universal design. And for those who may or may not know the difference, the baseline version of that is medical model is that disability is something to be fixed. It is something wrong with you that needs repair. Think of it like a flat tire needs to be patched, where a social model of disability means that the society has a responsibility to meet the individual with the disability halfway, that both make changes and modifications in order to make a united front. And that's essentially what universal design and universal design for learning try to do on a proactive level rather than a reactive level.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think, Natasha, that's the big thing. It's proactive. So we look at the needs first. So we're not like, oops, we just built a totally ableist meeting and then didn't realize the needs of the people, right? So you work, kind of work backwards to a certain degree. What's the need and how do we move forward with the scaffold? So, but yeah, that's the nooks of it. So, I mean, it's like, it's 5, I said it's 4, but it's really 5 because, it's what's the need, Who needs to be talking? That's representation, culture, relational, and ethnic, um, and racial. And in communication, how do we communicate with each other? How do I expect people to communicate back to me? And engagement, right? And so that's kind of the nooks of how we've adapted it for social emotional space holders. So and human service providers. Since you're all here, do you have any questions since we're here live? Feel free to put it in the chat or say it out loud, or you can always email it to us later too.
Hi. Hello?
Hey, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure. My audio hasn't been working very well, but I'm glad it's working. So I love all this, and I guess my question to you guys would be, how do you even begin this conversation? I have found that a lot of spaces sort of know this from a basic theory point of view, but they just really are not open to implementing this in any meaningful way, or even just engaging in this conversation in the first place. So I don't know if that's like too primary, but that's personally what I've been like really, really struggling with in different spaces.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So my number one piece of free advice is be the model of what you want to see. So anytime you have control over how something is delivered, whether it's your own communications, your own actions, your own projects, whatever the scale, begin those by assessing what's the function of my engagement and how do I take function to meet the needs of anyone who could show up to this engagement on a personal level, even from communicating to, a barista if you go to a coffee shop.
Yeah, and I just
Right.
want to echo that too. I mean, our program started in the school system because I started it, because I started doing it, right? I started universal design, and then we grew from that, right? We grew from that because I started implementing it with my students, right? And we got Natasha in, and then we started getting more people in over the last 7 years, right? So it grows. It's like a movement. Well, it is a movement. It's more than a movement. I mean, there's like scaffold, there's like things to it. But I mean, you can start like a little mini movement in your space, right?
Yeah, it's recognizing one need in your space and your ability to address that from a UDL perspective and doing it and
Right.
watching the results happen and pointing those results out. This is what happened, and then this is what we did that got them there.
Right.
Because if they see the results, the positive results ahead of time, they're more open to looking at, well, how did you get here? Well, let's talk about how we got here and how we can get here more often.
Right. No, that makes so much sense.
And
Thank
the
you.
other thing I will say is, I'm not sure if you work in a not-for-profit or if you work in a other space, but most places that have money and want to see evidence-based, it'll always give evidence. Always. I mean, like, always. Even if it's just
without fail.
Even if it's just like, look, that kid increased his reading skills or increased engagement or whatever. They showed up to therapy, whatever your purpose is.
Right.
It will not fail, even if it's just your own anecdotal data.
Right. Wow.
And if it looks like it's not working, it's because you didn't identify the actual starting point, the actual function of the activity.
Right.
And so you go back to square one and say, okay, what really was the purpose? I thought the purpose was the kid learning to tie their shoes, but the purpose actually was safe ambulation.
Right. No, that makes sense. It sounds like there's a lot of proving to be done almost. And I guess I come more from a justice framework. It's sort of like a given that that's the way that humans should interact with each other and need to interact with each other in order to be inclusive and safe and all that. And so I guess maybe that's one part I hadn't considered that much. It's like sort of showing people because they don't have those concepts inherently in their realm of reality. I don't know how to phrase that.
No, I absolutely get what you're saying. And I always go back in my talks and quote Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. If you want to see something, be the model for that something, others will pick up on it and start either asking you questions about it or start doing their own homework and doing it themselves.
And I would also, what was I going to say? On the justice framework of two, because I get this all the time. Like, because I work from a justice lens too, right? Integrate, we do. And there's like integrate world and there's like school world, right? And I'm like, it's like the way we want things to be, and then the way things are in the school system. And, I think with universal design, you also have to meet systems where they're at, right? And like universal design allows for that flexibility, right? And like, you're like, okay, here's where the system is at. What's the need in the system? There we go. Here's your purpose, and you go from there, right? So I think sometimes in justice circles, we kind of get stuck in like, ideology, and we're like, okay, where are we actually at? And it's
Oh, for sure. That is so relatable.
It's like, that's great. Where are we actually at as a species, like literally scientifically, neurobiologically, and then build from there. And that's why I love this from a justice lens too, is because it breaks up that nuance. It's like, that's where we want to be, right? That's where we want to be, but where are we actually? That's why I love it for our justice purposes too.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for that really good question. I really appreciate it. And moving forward, I mean, if you want to go deeper for anyone here live, Natasha and I do, either one of us individually or together, whichever one, we do sliding scale consultations, and you can get a hold of us separately or together, whichever one.
Amazing. I definitely think I will. You'll be hearing from me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to sit down virtually with you and really hashtag through specific scenarios and help you learn to apply this. At least get you started, and then go out into your world, try something, come back. Really, that coaching model.
Yes.
Do not hesitate to reach out for that, because that's also how you learn to model this for your community, is by having somebody model it on an ongoing basis for you.
I love that. So true. So true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think, and that's why we did this from a justice standpoint, was because I was seeing that, we were seeing that we're like, okay, we just need a little bit more nuance to be able to get it into like the justice circles. And then we just need to start to like plant seeds for thinking like this. And then like, I think we'll just be a lot more productive in our functionality around causes. I really do. I believe that. So anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you all so much. We'll send the recording, and feel free to share the recording out. I'm going to put all the captions on it, so if people need captions, it's there. So that'll probably be within the next day or two that I get that out, depending on Revs. Rev is the caption service I use, so depending on how fast they get it back to me. So this will be part 1 and part 2 are for your sharing, so feel free to share widely. And we're going to make it public on the YouTube channel and integrate. So anyway, thank you all so much for coming live. It was so great to have people live. Last time we were having some link issues, so it was great to have people. And thanks a lot to special educators. We love educators too. So I love working from all these different human lenses. It's so great. Human service provider lenses. So thanks everyone. Have a good afternoon.
You as well. Bye.
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 Thank you.